Welcome to CBS Wednesday. I'm Hannah Storm. Tonight, catch these great shows on America's most watched network. And then tomorrow, wake up to what's new on The Early Show.
Tonight, a CBS News special report. Dan Rather, a reporter remembers 50 years in broadcasting.
These armored convoys trying to move out of the area we've just sweeping through. One of the tanks has been hit.
At the door of the registration building on the main campus of the University of Alabama, Governor George Wallace is standing in the doorway, and he is giving what appears to be a message of capitulation. This is part of the police contingent arriving to surround the building. In this building, perhaps out of one of those open windows, is where the assassin of President Kennedy is believed to have fired the fatal shots. If any or all of what is alleged to have been going on is true, how high up in the White House does it go? President. And is the president himself involved? Are you running for something? No, sir, Mr. President, are you?
Once I was told by a high-ranking CBS executive, Dan, you're a very good reporter, but I don't think you're an anchor, and I don't think you'll ever become one.
Good evening.
What got me the job, what brought me to the job, was field reporting.
We just have a report from our correspondent, Dan Rather, in Dallas, that he has confirmed that President Kennedy is dead.
I always said I wanted to be a reporter. I wanted to be a great reporter.
Most crusades against segregation in the South in recent years.
One of the reasons you get into journalism, you have a sense of being part of something that matters, of doing work that counts.
Somebody's just firing at the tank. You can see him go. Okay, they've opened up on the tank now.
One way a reporter in this country should be judged
And what is your name, sir?
is how often, how well he or she stands up to the pressure to intimidate.
Mr. President.
Be respectful, be polite, but ask the question. Just ask the damn question.
The record shows that that's not quite the fact. That,
What kind of reporter are you if you don't press the
Now, it
questions?
strikes me that any reasonable person would say that's a record of ineffective leadership.
One can have too much passion,
You said that if you had known this was an arms for hostages swap, that you would have opposed it.
and I wish on some occasions I'd rein my passion in a little, but I have it. That's me. It's in my DNA. It's in my marrow.
West Germans celebrating on the wall itself.
Could you tell us what's happening here? Fill us in on what the situation is.
Excuse me, sir, to our Chinese bureaucratic friends who are here to try to shut us down.
Too much passion melded to loving the work lead to making mistakes. But I'd rather have too much than not enough.
Hey, toilet here. Yes. Thank you. Please stop the running. Not just the old handle jiggle. It's the oldest trick in the book. Still running. Running like a guy who runs a lot.
And verify
Tim,
that the amount being
you got a broken toilet on line 2? Please pick up.
And then remove all the water from the tank. Don't tighten the screw up too tight or you'll crack the porcelain.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. And don't forget to fix that chair.
Ace, the helpful place.
Revolution, get down. Revolution, get down. Revolution, get down. Don't treat me like I was born for nothing. 99 ain't no number. All or nothing, get down. All or nothing, get down. All or nothing, get
Bertolli. Why go out for great Italian? Introducing Bertolli frozen dinners. Savor plump shrimp scampi and linguine al dente, served with roasted red peppers, all in a luscious garlic sauce inspired by Italy's top chefs. Just saute and serve. Now you don't have to be an Italian chef. Bertolli. To be an Italian chef. New Bertolli frozen dinners. Try the whole menu.
America's best night of television is all new CBS Thursday. Someone's grounding flight attendants.
permanently.
What are you doing in Sue Stein's hotel room? You won't believe me.
Guest star Stephen Baldwin is not your usual suspect.
He's killed more than once.
Killer was never apprehended.
That was then. This is now.
A new CSI. Then, even in a neighborhood like yours, there's no telling what you'll find.
What are we in the mood for today?
A new Without a Trace after a new CSI Thursday.
A teenage boy is convicted of killing his parents. 15 years later, could this man's secret change everything?
You know for a fact that Marty Tankleff did not kill his parents.
Definitely. Fact.
A 48 Hours mystery Saturday.
I always dreamed of being a reporter. I grew up in the Heights Annex, Houston, Texas. All frame houses, streets were unpaved, but this was not unusual. Remember, this was the 1930s. My father had a job in a depression, which was a precious thing. He was a pipeliner, which meant that he dug ditches along which they could lay pipe. A great neighborhood where people look after one another. I can remember any number of times just, I'd get a block and a half away, and if I didn't behave myself before I got home, my mother knew about it. I had rheumatic fever, and I was bedridden for 2 specific periods, once for 8 or 9 months and another for 3 or 4 months. I hated having to stay in bed, but the radio was my escape. The Great War, World War II, was exploding. The Ed Murrows, the Charles Collingwoods, the Richard C. Hotlits, the great legends of CBS became very real to me.
Just overhead now, the burst of the anti-aircraft fire. There they are. That hard, stony sound.
People on radio were great describers. A picture sometimes is worth 1,000 words, but sometimes a word, the right word, is worth 1,000 pictures. I knew that from listening to radio. When I got up from bed, I remember how thin I was, and I had difficulty moving because I'd been in bed for a long time. And as soon as I was able to get up, my father just insisted I go right to work. By getting work beginning at age 14 in and around oil fields and pipe gangs, I built my strength up fairly quickly. My mother was absolutely determined that I would go to college, against all odds, and I wound up going to what was then Sam Houston State Teachers College in Huntsville, Texas. I started to enroll, and they say, "What do you want to major in?" I said, "Well, I want to be a reporter." When I started in broadcasting, which overstates it a bit, my job on radio was to be a jack of all trades, write commercials, do newscasts, and football, baseball, and basketball games, play-by-play.
Again, Dan Rather. Houston leads the Texas Aggies. Once again, the Aggies are out in this modified single-wing spread. Ed Dudley all by himself. He's as lonely as Custer Little Bighorn back there on the 40-yard line.
This is certainly not rocket science, but one of the things I learned was the ability to ad-lib.
Mr. Rockney, how are things over in the radar room?
So when I wandered into television, and one of, if not the largest hurricanes came from across Yucatan into the Gulf of Mexico. Hurricane Carla was so huge and potentially so destructive. Pretty quickly, it became clear to the Weather Bureau that what they needed to do is convince people they needed to evacuate.
Evacuation should be hastened before it is too late.
And the key was to use, I say it with a smile, the new technology, which was the ability to get a radar picture pretty far out in the Gulf.
Mr. Rockney, can we move into the radar room now?
Putting the radar picture of the hurricane was something new on television.
There is the eye of the hurricane right there.
So people could see in their living rooms how huge the hurricane was. While the death toll was reasonably small, the reason it was low is because people listened and got out.
Ooh, this is cold.
In late 1961, after the coverage of Hurricane Carla, CBS News hired me to be a CBS News correspondent.
Everybody home?
And my job was to cover 23 states, Mexico, and Central America. This was my territory, if you will.
Thank you. Goodbye. Back to you. These are about 4 of the calmest people in a flood I've ever seen.
One of the worst mosquito invasions ever is plaguing the Texas and Louisiana coasts this summer. Literally millions of mosquitoes are making life especially miserable here in the South Louisiana bayou and swamp country.
But what was happening in the country at that time is that this, what we now call the civil rights movement, was beginning to explode.
May mean going to jail, but I'm going if it means that. It may even mean physical death, but if it means that I will die standing up for the freedom of my people. God has spoken to me.
Martin Luther King is among those who has vowed not to let the voter registration movement in Leesburg and the rest of South Georgia fail.
That God has given each and every one of us a rightful place in this world.
There was at the other extreme the Ku Klux Klan, White Citizens Council, people determined to keep segregation as it was. And I was gape-mouthed and bug-eyed most of the time about what I was seeing. People would come seemingly out of the woodwork or out of the shrubbery and hit people with clubs, particularly cameramen were sometimes beaten. Place after place, we were spat upon by the worst elements of the community and called the colored broadcasting system.
This is CBS News in Albany, Georgia.
I had no idea, although I'd grown up in a segregated society myself, of what it was really like to be black and to live in terror and in fear. And it changed me dramatically as a person. In place after place after place, there was viciousness against women, children, churches. We reached the decisive moment when George Wallace, the governor of Alabama, said, I will not allow the University of Alabama to be desegregated.
Tuesday, over there at Foster Auditorium, 2 Negroes will come to enroll.
George Wallace said, I will stand in the schoolhouse door and stop you.
I stand here today as governor of this sovereign state and refuse to wittingly submit to illegal usurpation of power by the central government.
We were covering this live, but we couldn't have live camera coverage on the campus. This setup by which we put this on television is so Neanderthal by television standards now. Nelson Benton, my colleague, would be there. I would be just off campus on a telephone hookup with him. He would describe for me what was happening, and then I, live to New York, would relay his descriptions by telephone.
Governor Wallace is now walking away from the door, apparently capitulating now in his battle against the United States government to prevent 2 Negro students from entering the previously all-white University of Alabama.
And television has many weaknesses, but one of the strengths of television is it can put you there. And you could see for yourself, hear for yourself, and make a judgment for yourself what the reality was, and the reality was really ugly. And eventually, the country as a whole said, you know, we can't abide this, we can't stand this, and made changes.
This Texas trip is the first out-and-out political appearance for Mrs. Kennedy at her husband's side since the 1960 campaign, and Democrats are making the most of it.
It was 1963, and I was assigned to the Kennedy trip to Texas.
Crowds continually yelled, Jackie, Jackie, and seemed more interested in a look at her than anyone else.
I was in Dallas November 22nd for what we all thought would be a reasonably routine day.
It appears as though something has happened in the motorcade route. Something, I repeat, has happened in the motorcade route.
There was clear panic. People were still on the ground with fathers trying to cover mothers and children. And the president, a high probability had been hit, a possibility that he'd actually been killed. But we didn't know anything. Dialed the hospital, and I just begged them to give me somebody, and eventually got a doctor and a priest who just matter-of-factly said the president was dead.
We just have a report from our correspondent Dan Rather in Dallas that he has confirmed that President Kennedy is dead.
Switchboards all over Dallas are still completely swamped with callers who apparently refuse to believe that John F. Kennedy has been shot and killed.
We had convinced ourselves this kind of thing doesn't happen in America. I didn't have any real doubts, but we were on the air some long minutes before any official announcement that the President of the United States was dead.
From Dallas, Texas, the flash, apparently official, President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, some 38 minutes ago.
After the initial hammer to the heart and sledge to the psyche, the strongest feeling in my mind was what a terrible thing for the country. What a terrible thing for the Kennedy family. Somebody said that somewhere along the line afterward, we broke the story of the president's death before the official announcement. I remember saying, so what? The country matters. The Kennedy family matters. Where we go from here now, future matters.
You haven't seen The Incredibles until you've seen The Incredibles on DVD. Featuring the all-new animated short, Jack Jack Attack. The Incredibles. Disney presents a Pixar film. Owned it on DVD March 15th.
Let's talk about better. When someone says something's better, it's usually just their opinion. So if you suffer from acid reflux disease, frequent heartburn, and I told you prescription Nexium heals acid-related damage in the esophagus better, you'd want proof. And now, your doctor has that proof. Recent medical studies prove Nexium heals that damage better than the other leading prescription medicine. No wonder they call Nexium the healing purple pill. So call your doctor today and ask if Nexium is right for you. Because if left untreated, the damage could get worse. Other serious stomach conditions may still exist. The most common side effects of Nexium are headache, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. Hey, with Nexium, you don't just feel better, you are better. And better is better.
Teleservice and support, can I help you?
You're there.
Yes, sir, we're here 24/7, 365.
What about leap year?
366.
Rest easy with award-winning service and support behind every Dell PC 24/7.
Good night.
Like this Dimension desktop with an Intel Celeron processor for just $399. Plus, get free shipping with mail-in rebate and get a free printer. Dell notebooks start at just $637. Hurry, these offers end March 9th. Get more out of service and support with Dell. Get more out of now. Dell PCs use Intel Celeron processors.
Campbell's tomato soup, possibilities. So nice with grilled cheese, together with my family. Dip it, dunk it, stir it up. That's the way we like it. Possibilities.
In this crazy world, it's nice to know there's someone you can always count on.
I dreamed a RE/MAX agent just saved my life.
Again.
Nobody sells more real estate than RE/MAX.
What I like about Vision from Sprint is the picture mail. So I'm pet sitting my friend's bird, I take a picture of it. Now, anything happens, he flies away. I send the picture to a pet store, get another one, a better one even. You're a good friend, Curtis.
With Sprint PCS Picture Mail, you can take and send unlimited pictures. Try it and other Sprint PCS Vision services free and see how easy and amazing they really are. Sprint PCS, now that's better.
Can inspiration replace the typical small car with something that lives a little larger? More space. More function. More sizzle. America's best small car alternative just got a little better. The Chrysler PT Cruiser, now starting at just $13,995. Chrysler, inspiration comes standard.
Mort thought he knew what he wanted from life until he met Millie.
I'm not supposed to love you.
Together, they'll find true love is worth fighting for.
Parkinson's. That's what I have, right?
I love you. I'm always going to love you.
Madeline Stowe, Bruce Greenwood, Saving Millie. Premieres CBS Sunday.
1 in 2 women over 50 will suffer a bone fracture. Osteoporosis is serious. Protect your bones now. Visit cbscares.tv.
I remember my first impression was, I'd seen Vietnam from the air coming in. What an emerald green, beautiful place it was. When I sat down in Tom Key, it was a green jungle hell. I really wanted to go to Vietnam. It's not a case of I just want to go. I've got to go. I knew it was a story, just that in your gut, this is going to be one of the defining stories of my time. So that's what brought me to having a family council. My children were very young, and with Jean, and saying, look, they've finally agreed to send me. And Jean said, you know, go, because you've got to go. And I called the boss back within hours and said, I'm ready to go, and I can leave this afternoon. I wanted to get into the field as quickly as I could.
This is the 25th Infantry Division.
I got there just as the American involvement was really beginning to explode.
And the Viet Cong has opened fire on the convoy. We're now firing back and have asked for air support.
Could you tell us what's happening here? Fill us in on what the situation is.
I think this is the second or third day that I was in Vietnam.
This is the Special Landing Force, is it? Right.
Place called Tom Key.
We're not real clear.
They were trying to get to a ridge line.
Just before you get to the high ridge over there.
Right.
But then as they began to move, they got caught in a crossfire. And this young Marine was hit very badly. They needed help getting him out. And naturally, I helped.
Okay, we're going to put it down now, Manny. Okay, throw me on my left side.
It doesn't take much imagination to know what I was thinking.
We need some help over here.
I'll give you a hand.
And I see this young man, much younger than I, cut down.
Okay. Talk to him right on the face.
And you say to yourself, my God, you know, this is somebody's son, this is somebody's brother, somebody's husband. Well, when you're there, if you let your emotions for a second out of you,
evacuate rear to where we can get him out on a chopper. Do you understand? Over.
Then you're not going to be able to do what you need to do.
Dan Rather, CBS News, on the beach near Tom Key.
You know, very few people in a lifetime get to see this as an observer.
We're inside the main pagoda now. We've just arrived here, and a tank has just poked its head right around the corner.
You know, your role is to show them and tell them as best you can what it's like, what it's really like.
Somebody's just firing at the tank. You can see him go through the gate. They've opened up on the tank now.
As opposed to what someone may imagine it's like or what someone's telling them it's like. A lot of people believe that what soldiers fear in combat is death. Well, they do fear that, but that's not the big fear. The biggest fear is that they will somehow let their comrade die.
No soldier worthy of the name will leave even a dead comrade on the field of battle and abandon him. This outfit was rained on yesterday, rained on again this morning. But they're going to stay out here until they find the body of Rudolph Nunes.
Everybody gets to be just like brothers, and he's just the best friend you could ever have.
The Nunes thing had tremendous impact on me. We didn't go there as journalists with anti-war sentiment. With the country at war, my country at war, I want the country to win, whatever the definition of win is. But I was increasingly struck by the difference between what was being said in Washington and Saigon about what was happening on the ground.
I just think that we're being quite successful.
I'm cautiously optimistic. We're gaining militarily.
And what the reality was. The reality was it was a minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day death struggle. And this was in some ways the beginning of the difficulties between the press and the government.
The president is at the center of new, vigorous debate within his administration over how many more troops to send to South Vietnam.
I covered the White House for 10 years. That included the last part of President Johnson's elective term.
But I point out to you the time has come.
He preferred to deal person to person.
Mr. President.
Always feeling that if he could just get one-on-one with you, that he could get you going his way. Once or twice he called me when I was at my in-laws' house in Texas. And, you know, you always want to be at your best with your in-laws. And they all want to know, well, what do you say? And you say, well, frankly, you took a big chunk out of my backside.
A Democratic convention is about to begin in a police state.
One of the more interesting campaigns was the presidential campaign of 1968.
Don't push me. Take your hands off of me unless you plan to arrest me. Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
Dan Rather.
Well, Walter, as you can see, I'm sorry to be out of breath, but somebody belted me in the stomach doing that. What happened is a Georgia delegate, at least he had a Georgia delegate sign on, was being hauled out of the hall. We tried to talk to him to see why, who he was, and what the situation was. And at that instant, the security people, well, as you can see, put me on the deck. I didn't do very well.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
When President Nixon was elected, it didn't take long to figure out that the way they were going to operate was to try to intimidate.
Perhaps the place to start looking for a credibility gap is not in the offices of the government in Washington, but in the studios of the networks in New York.
Either you report it our way, or we make you pay a price.
At first, it was called the Watergate Caper. 5 men, apparently caught in the act of burglarizing and bugging Democratic headquarters in Washington.
From the moment that we began aggressive reporting about what we now call Watergate.
How high up in the White House does it go?
Relations between President Nixon and the White House, myself and CBS, got progressively worse in a hurry.
Mr. President, I want to state this question with due respect to your office, but also as directly as...
That would be unusual.
This was a sort of technique that President Nixon used just to sort of throw things a little off balance.
I wonder if you could tell us what goes through your mind when you hear people who love this country and people who believe in you say reluctantly that perhaps you should resign or be impeached.
Well, I'm glad we don't take the vote in this room, we say.
By this time, in Houston, it was my hometown, President Nixon was beginning to get cornered by the facts. It was designed to be not a news conference. It was designed to be a political rally in support of the president. And in that atmosphere, you saw when I first got up, there were some cheers, but there were a lot of boos.
Thank you, Mr. President. Dan Rather with CBS News. President, are you running for something?
I was thinking this time, don't let him throw you off. And that's when I said what I did.
No, sir, Mr. President, are you? Mr. President.
What I meant was, let me get on with my question. That's what I'm here to do. I think it's fair to say it was some hell to pay after that. My only regret about that whole thing is that everybody remembers that exchange where I wish they'd remember the question I asked.
How can the House meet its constitutional responsibilities while you, the person under investigation, are allowed to limit their access to potential evidence?
And the question,
well, Mr. Rather,
was an important question.
I am suggesting that the House follow the Constitution. If they do, I will.
In the end, President Nixon could not reconcile what he had been telling people had happened with what the special prosecutor was developing in the way of facts and first-person eyewitness testimony, and that's what led to his resignation.
Therefore, I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
There is no joy in this for anyone. No decent-thinking American could take any joy out of this.
In 1975,
I'm Mike Wallace.
I'm Morley Safer.
Mike Wallace came to me and said,
"Come on in, fellas.
We really want you to come into 60 Minutes. We did develop a reputation.
Could you explain to me what this stamp is?
For doing investigative pieces.
Where did you get it? I got it from someone who told me that you used that to put a different kind of stamp on the meat than the store buyer put on his own meat. Is that right?
It was always about the story. Is this a good story?
These Afghan clothes I'm wearing were part of an operation to sneak me and a CBS News film crew into Afghanistan.
It's a holy war they're fighting. A jihad, they call it.
Does he have ammunition for this? He has
Once I was told by a high-ranking CBS executive, Dan, you're a very good reporter, but I don't think you're an anchor, and I don't think you'll ever become one. I remember walking out of his office saying, well, nobody ever said that to me, and yeah, maybe I shouldn't be proud of it. I said, I'm going to set out to show him I can be.
And that's the way it is. Friday, March 6th, 1981. I'll be away on assignment, and Dan Rather will be sitting in here for the next few years. Good night.
For news 24 hours a day, click on CBSNews.com. Sponsored in part by Lamisil Tablets. Ask your doctor if Lamisil tablets are right for you. Lamisil Tablets.
The entirely new 300 horsepower GS. The next phenomenon from Lexus.
Never know how much I love you. Never know how much I care. When you put your arms around me, I get a fever that's so hard to bear. You give me fever.
It's Applebee's Barbecue Fever. Slow-cooked barbecue kissed with a sweet honey barbecue sauce.
Fever till you sizzle. What a lovely way to burn.
Eating good in the neighborhood.
For you, my sweet. I see you are overcome with love. Achoo! Or could it be congestion and other seasonal nasal allergy symptoms? Your congestion will not keep us apart.
Only Nasonex is clinically proven to both treat and help prevent most seasonal nasal allergy symptoms, including congestion. Side effects were generally mild and included headache, viral infection, sore throat, nosebleeds, and coughing.
Love means never having to say you are congested.
To treat and help prevent most seasonal nasal allergy symptoms, Nasonex is the one. Talk to your doctor.
At UBS, we offer our clients serious financial resources. Over 100 years of experience. The expertise of the world's largest wealth management firm. And, of course, the most serious resource of all. A relationship with an advisor who actually understands you. Wealth management at UBS. From wealth preservation to lending and investment. You and us. UBS.
Some families are good at entertaining themselves. For the rest of us, there's Radio Shack, where you can get great deals on wireless phones. Now buy any Verizon wireless phone and get up to 3 Samsung color screen phones free with 2-year agreement on each. Plus, get this replica race hood free by mail. Yes, Radio Shack has everything to make your road trip more fun. Unless you like yodeling. Radio Shack, you've got questions, we've got answers.
Dan Rather, A Reporter Remembers, will continue.
What's on this boat will change island life.
Oh my God.
A new Survivor, CBS Thursday.
She thought she had health coverage until she got sick. Tonight at 11, a nationwide health insurance scam that's leaving vulnerable people with millions in unpaid medical bills. How can you protect yourself from the coverage con game? Watch CBS 2 News at 11 tonight. There's a new way to beat that morning commute.
It's a technological breakthrough.
Giving you exact speeds,
travel times, and delays on major commuter routes.
With new point-to-point traffic reports from the 2 crew. Weekday mornings, 5 to 7. 0 to 60 in under 8 seconds. 200 horsepower, 3.5-liter engine. It's all about the numbers. Log on to CBSNewYork.com for a chance to win a number of great prizes. Then watch Numbers Friday at 10 on CBS 2, sponsored locally by the Pontiac G6. The thrill reinvented.
T-minus 20 seconds and counting. We are go. Guidance internal. Program confirmed. 10, 9, 8, 7. Ignition sequence start. 4, 3, 2, 1. All engines running. Liftoff. We have liftoff at 8:14 in the morning.
The first ever G6.
With action, anything is possible. Starting around 21-3. See your local Pontiac dealer.
The end of Jane Sobieski's day is just as hectic as the beginning. So ShopRite's helping make life as easy as possible with great meal ideas in our seafood department. A nice fresh salad and a loaf of freshly baked bread, all at ShopRite's low prices.
Listen to your favorite radio program anytime, anywhere, podcasting.
Thursday morning starting at 5.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather.
Good evening. President Reagan still training...
I've been told the first person after Cronkite's going to get his head blown off. Nobody succeeds Walter Cronkite.
Doctors at Stanford University today performed a heart and lung transplant on a Mesa, Arizona.
And what was in my mind was accept that you have some shortcomings as anchor and go into this as something new to learn.
There's a word missing here.
And try to stay true, try to be with what brought you. What got me the job, what brought me to the job was field reporting. In my own mind, it was reporter, italicize, all caps, underline, dash, anchor, second.
Until tomorrow, Dan Rather, CBS News. Good night.
I was sure glad when that Monday was over. I remember afterward, mentally, it was just well, the first night's over. Now let's take a deep breath, suck it up, and get to work.
Mr. President! President Reagan was the target of an assassination attempt outside
Prince Charles and the Princess of Wales leaving...
Challenger, go at throttle up.
Challenger, go at throttle.
The Space Shuttle Challenger exploded into a gigantic fireball a minute and 12 seconds after liftoff this morning. And lest we forget what brave people these were. Commander Francis Scobie, Michael J. Smith, who was the pilot, Judith Resnick. Mr. Vice President, thank you for being with us tonight.
My determination to be a reporter anchor, not just a hothouse plant in a studio kind of anchor, created, quote, trouble.
The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Iran-Contra was another case of people wanting to keep secret things that citizens had a right to know.
America will never make concessions to terrorists.
The question was whether the top echelons of the United States government had sent some of our very best advanced weapons to the mullahs in Iran, the same people in Iran who'd taken our fellow citizens hostage, who were committed to our destruction, get the money from these death to America mullahs for the weapons, and then use the money for a secret war they were trying to run in Central America. That's a story. That's something people deserve to know about.
I am proud to have been vice president, and now I want to be your president.
The then vice president had some knowledge of getting some of our most technologically advanced missiles to the Iranians.
I thought I was here to talk about my views on education or on getting his deficit down.
But it disintegrated into not a good situation.
You said that if you had known this was an arms for hostages swap, that you would have opposed it. You also said that you did not know that...
May I answer that?
That wasn't a question, it was a statement.
Yes, it was a statement, and
Let me ask the question.
I can be faulted for maybe I pressed too hard, maybe I didn't press in the right way.
Iran was officially a terrorist state. You went around telling...
Explain that, Dan. I wanted those hostages. I wanted Mr. Buckley out of there.
But you made us hypocrites in the face of the world. How could you plan on such a policy?
It was an important issue which Dan Rather pursued characteristically.
I was news president then. Did I think it was disrespectful? Obviously, you don't want to be disrespectful.
I need combat pay for last night, I'll tell you, but...
About last night's interview with George Bush, trying to ask honest questions and trying to be persistent about answers is part of a reporter's job.
The tension between administrations and reporters should be acute. It's in the nature of journalism.
Stand by. This is the CBS Evening News.
Good evening. The U.S. Justice Department may...
Dan, in essence, his personality resists the idea of anchor.
And that's part of our world.
The pursuit of the story was the paramount interest.
A round came right over us and landed just over there, about 25 feet.
Anchor, in some ways, feels like a more passive role. The very word says, stuck at the bottom of the sea.
And now the kitchen with the river
right at window level.
You are there to be reassuring,
The wind doesn't get much worse than it is right here.
to be stable and firm, the authority figure.
What has happened in Zimbabwe is this.
Whereas Dan comes out of that repertorial tradition, which means take me to the front, show me where the danger is, give me a door to knock down, give me a story to find.
Tiananmen Square, a sea of flags, more than 1 million students crowded in here today.
You could hear these voices of the young. This was a true people's movement, led by students. And you know, it came so breathtakingly close to succeeding. But day by day, you could feel the pressure from the government beginning to inch in, having to get increasingly tougher with the people in Tiananmen Square. And they were also having to get increasingly tougher with the press.
I mean, anybody could come here and say they represent somebody else, and we're here to turn off your satellite.
The representatives of the government appeared at the hotel location where we'd set up shop, saying, you can no longer broadcast live. We're here to, in effect, shut you down.
This is Dan Rather, CBS News.
It was whispered to me, you know, backpedal for time. Think of anything. Keep them talking. Susan Spencer had pictures of some of the toughest crackdown to date and sending it up on the satellite.
Now, we've just been called to the control room. Excuse me, sir, to our Chinese bureaucratic friends who are here to try to shut us down.
Eventually, they said, in effect, enough already. I'm here to pull the plug, and we're going to do it now.
This is Dan Rather, CBS News, Beijing.
And it went to hash, and that ended the live broadcasting from there. And when they shut off live television, it was only a matter of time until they would move in and end what was happening in Tiananmen Square. How can you be an authority on things if you don't sometimes get out of the windowless room on the west side of Manhattan, grab a pencil and a notebook, get a camera crew, and go cover something? I don't think it was an error to be true to myself and be true to the audience and say, just because I'm moving in the anchor chair,
This is what the well-dressed dope dealer's wearing today?
doesn't mean I'm going to stop being a reporter.
Got the anchor.
I didn't do that, and about that, at least, I'm not sorry.
Iraq invaded and took over its tiny neighbor Kuwait today. This is Dan Rather, CBS News in Baghdad, where the temperature is above 100 degrees and a hot wind blows.
We, from the very beginning, had in mind what would shed as much or more light on this than anything else, interview with Saddam Hussein. We've been trying for weeks.
Saddam Hussein has sent another strong message that he now considers Kuwait part of Iraq and that he will never underscore the word.
So I was in bed, it was after midnight, knock at the door, and there were two people in uniform, one with an automatic weapon. And the guy said in broken English, you know, come with us. There's nothing like seeing the person in the flesh and feeling the grip of his handshake and the look in his eye. He has what the military calls command presence.
Respectfully, it is you who invaded another country, not the United States who invaded any country.
I interviewed him for over an hour. As soon as the interview ended, he wanted to give me a tour of the palace. And mentally I'm saying, the last thing I need is a tour of the palace. I want to get this videotape out of here. And I finally just said, look, I could hear the history of Iraq as told by Saddam Hussein for a long time. It's a lovely palace, but gotta go.
What we had hoped and prayed would not happen, could not happen, has happened. New York's World Trade Center, in effect, has been destroyed. This is looking south on Manhattan Island. The smoke and, yes, still the flames from what happened at the World Trade Center. To grasp the enormity of it is almost too much for the heart to bear. This night, we can only look back in sorrow at a world that has suddenly, perhaps irrevocably, been changed. And tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that, and in days and years to come, we will look at the calendar and remember September 11th, 2001.
Ocean Spray White Cranberry has a great less tart taste, but let's hear what the critics have to say. Ocean Spray White Cranberry. It's the less tart taste kids have a hard time putting into words. And try our newest flavor, White Cranberry Wildberry. It's a one-of-a-kind blend of white cranberries with blueberries and blackberries that all your little taste buds will love. Only from Ocean Spray.
There's never been a better time to talk with your doctor about Ambien, because now you can try Ambien free. Visit Ambien.com for details.
Excuse me, do you believe your brokerage firm's advice is objective?
Sure. Their objective is to sell me something.
Well, he only calls me when he's got something to sell.
I made it my objective to do my own investing. So I switched to TD Waterhouse. Best move I ever made.
TD Waterhouse brings together free, independent research and third-party reports so you can make your own objective decisions. You can do this. Switch today to TD Waterhouse, the alternative to higher-priced brokers.
A woman's world never stops. Whoa, it's lunchtime. Have Campbell's soup at hand. It's just a microwave away.
Delicious.
Stop. Bet you haven't eaten all day.
Campbell's Soup at Hand vegetable beef. I love it.
Campbell's soup at hand. Good to go.
Comprehensive virus protection. Whatever.
I'd like my computer to be hacked like Kung Pao chicken.
I like to share my private email with the general public.
Millions of Americans are just asking for a computer virus because they're not nearly as protected as they think they are.
I think vulnerability is really nice.
I find the prospect of new computer viruses exciting.
That's why America Online now gives our members virus protection that works for your whole computer, not just email, absolutely free. Want a better internet? You belong at America Online.
This allergy season, ask your doctor about something different. Singulair. While many seasonal allergy medicines block histamine, Singulair works differently by blocking leukotrienes, an underlying cause of seasonal allergy symptoms. And one prescription Singulair helps relieve a broad range of seasonal allergy symptoms for a full 24 hours. Side effects are generally mild and vary by age, and may include headache, ear infection, sore throat, and upper respiratory infection. Singulair, a different way to treat seasonal allergies.
Next, Doug joins Overeaters Anonymous.
Every single time you fall off the wagon, and then you eat the wagon.
The King of Queens, CBS Next.
Survivor Thursday. What's aboard this boat?
Look at it.
Is about to change everyone's life on the island.
Oh my God.
And the Oolong tribe has lost every immunity challenge.
We can't lose another tribe member.
Now their struggle to stay alive comes down to a hand-to-hand, no-holds-barred fight to the finish.
We're gonna run right through them like a dang bulldozer.
Andy's so excited, she didn't know what to say.
A new Survivor, CBS Thursday.
An artist's hidden talent.
Someone actually draws these.
Just got her kidnapped by violent counterfeiters.
They'll have no choice but to kill her.
Now, to find her, the FBI will have to let the money talk.
Looking straight on, just a bunch of thick lines. Angle it to get an edge on view. There may be a hidden message in this bill.
A new number, CBS Friday.
Over the weekend, as some of you may have already heard or read, I was assaulted with violence on a Manhattan street.
What's the frequency at the show?
You know, I can be blamed for a lot of things, but I can't be blamed for this. I was walking along Park Avenue, and things happened very suddenly.
I couldn't make any sense of it at the time.
And I wound up being knocked down. Fair to say, I really got the hell beat out of me by someone I didn't know.
I don't know why it happened. I may never know.
The police had asked me whether anything said to me, and I vaguely remembered at one point it was, what's the frequency? And then I thought somebody had addressed me as Kenneth, and that got sort of compacted into what's the frequency, Kenneth. The next thing I knew, it was all over the news, not always complimentary, I'd say.
What's the frequency, Kenneth?
When somebody first told me that REM had written a song about it, I sort of said, damn, here we go again. But then I listened to the song and got it in some perspective. I had reached the point where I thought, well, it may never be explained. Although always there was a small part of me thought, well, truth will out. Someday we'll know what happened. And someday we did find out what happened.
A North Carolina man is charged with murder in New York City in the death of an NBC stagehand who was shot outside of Rockefeller Center studios. Police arrested 46-year-old William Tager at the scene yesterday afternoon.
Why did you do it?
As I understand it, he was angry with people in television, particularly television news, because he felt we were sending waves off the television set, directing his life and ruining his life. And the authorities clearly established that he was the person who had attacked me. He knew some details of the attack that only he and I knew. And when they separately interviewed us, they matched up the stories, and no question that he did it. I was very lucky and blessed that he didn't kill me that night. One way a reporter in this country should be judged is how well he or she stands up to the pressure to intimidate. I remember the first time someone accused me of being an in-lover. There was a lot of that during the 60s when I covered the civil rights movement. Then you move forward from civil rights into the Vietnam War.
How can so many die in a war that's supposed to be so small?
We're going to hang a sign around you which calls you some bad name. Anti-military, anti-American, anti-war. Then
5 men.
When Watergate came into being,
How high up in the White House does it go?
It was the first time I began to hear this word liberal as an epithet thrown my way.
He is the quintessence to millions of Americans of liberal bias on the network news.
He is the personification of liberal media bias.
Bias in CBS and Dan Rather.
People who have very strong biases of their own, they come at you with a story. If you won't report it the way I want it reported, then you're biased. Now, it is true about me, for better or for worse. If you want to see my neck swell, you just try to tell me where to line up or what to think, and mostly what to report.
Some of these senators, President, say that the only way they can get your attention is to do something unlawful.
Pull no punches, play no favorites.
And to those who said, well, there's no smoking gun, would you argue with that?
What do you mean by smoking gun? How about lots of smoke?
One can have too much zeal. One can have too much passion. And sometimes I have. Too much passion melded to loving the work lead to making mistakes.
The documents purported to show that George W. Bush received preferential treatment during his years in the Texas Air National Guard. Tonight, after further investigation, we can no longer vouch for their authenticity. CBS News President Andrew Hayward has ordered an independent investigation.
The panel said today, and I'm quoting, there was a myopic zeal to be first on the story.
We should have been more rigorous in establishing the validity of the documents.
The panel found no political agenda.
We didn't find any actual bias.
First and foremost is that 4 people lost their jobs over it. And I never have them far from my mind.
And I also want to say personally and directly, I'm sorry.
I regret every nanosecond when I let anybody at CBS News down, and even more when I let the audience down. It's painful to me.
I suppose in one level there's a continuity between this story and Dan's experience, because the story of Dan's journalistic career is one of pursuit of a story. And this was pursuit of a story. You could say that playing it safe would have had Dan always be an anchorman. They'll never get attached to dangerous stories. But he's inclined to be lightning.
You have no memory of
the inhabitants being lined up and shot at point-blank range repeatedly with automatic weapons?
No.
There seems to be some confusion about what your orders are. In the first paragraph of your obituary is going to be a reference, only president in the 20th century to be impeached. Why would you think that you could prevail this time on the battlefield? I have my weaknesses. I've made my mistakes. But the one mistake I've tried hard not to make is to say, okay, I know which way the wind is blowing, and I'm going to tailor my reporting to fit that. Ain't going to do it. Haven't, don't, won't. When they say to reporters you can't get in there, they're saying to you, the citizen, you can't get in there. Governor Wallace is leaving the door of the registration building, apparently capitulating now.
Time has a way of introducing wisdom to someone's legacy and history.
Is the most dangerous game.
You'll remember Dan for all those images of Dan in the front lines of every major story since the Civil Rights crisis.
The Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was shot to death by an assassin late today.
And what is your name, sir?
And being committed to the telling of those stories.
And that's part of our rapidly changing world.
That legacy will be a window into broadcast journalism that will become more valuable as time passes.
Nelson Mandela, at age 75, casting the very first ballot of his life. If a caption writer were to put a caption under this picture, it would be unbelievable. It was this picture and dozens of others that prompted an investigation by the U.S. Army. What are your hopes now?
The freedom only.
Looking back on the anchor years.
Good evening.
It's gone by so much faster than I ever imagined it could.
Nearly a quarter of a century.
My only thought is how lucky I've been and how blessed I've been. And you can't do it for that long and love it as much as I have loved it and do love it, and not have some sense of
New Year's Eve in New York.
I'd like to have another day, another week. But the other side of it is, I'm not retiring. I'm just changing jobs again. I can spend my time reporting, which is my first love.
I think Dan would like to be remembered as somebody who made a difference.
Here in Thailand and throughout the tsunami zone, it's a desperate struggle tonight to get help where it's needed.
I've never seen anybody more comfortable in the field than Dan Rather. It's an extraordinary body of work.
I wanted, when I walk down the street, for people to say, there goes a real reporter.
Dan Rather, CBS News, on the beach near Tamaki.
Dan Rather, CBS News, Danang. Dan Rather, CBS News, Salzburg, Austria. Dan Rather, CBS News, with the traveling White House in Tulsa.
Dan Rather, CBS News, somewhere along the ceasefire line between India and
Dan Rather, CBS News, Jalapla Pass in the Himalayas.
This is Dan Rather on the campus of the University of Mississippi.
And to each of you, courage. For the CBS Evening News, Dan Rather reporter. Good night. Better pull the cot up to the television set and don't get too comfy. Call a doctor, call the police, call a psychic, and hold on to the bedstead or something. Presidential race still hotter than a Laredo parking lot. He's basically got his back to the wall, his shirt tail on fire, and the bill collector's at the door. But the opera isn't over until the heavy lady sings. She has not yet sung, but backstage one can hear her humming. Republican, Democrat, or mugwump can just about say, adios, been good to see you, not gonna happen. Whew, what a night.
Madeline Stowe, Bruce Greenwood, Saving Millie, premieres CBS Sunday.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, I'd like to return these checks. You put the bank's address on them instead of mine.
Okay, that's a new printing fee, a transaction fee, and of course a conversation fee.
Conversation fee?
We'll have to charge you for this little chat we're having. 3 pronouns, 7 verbs.
What?
Oh, emotional outburst fee. Well, those can be steep. You'll have to write us a check.
Fed up with fees? Try Washington Mutual. Our free checking has no teller fees, no fine print, no surprises.
There you go. Have to charge you for that.
Washington Mutual.
Lots of Toyota cars, hundreds of choices. Toyota's nationwide spring sales event with thousands of amazing values, like leasing a new 2005 Sienna for just $249 a month for 36 months. That's a tremendous offer on the Toyota minivan, famous for style, versatility, and a best pick for safety. Toyota's nationwide spring sales event. Quality, selection, value. Now that's moving you forward.
I'm John Bolaris. The icy grip continues, but there could be more snow at 11.
Dave's got Paris Hilton, plus the Late Show Weekend Review tonight.